Hi, and welcome to a very short notice, but much long anticipated episode of Club Ausome Charlie Live. So, this is a series, it's very informal live streams, and they go on my YouTube and stuff, where I just get in a different friend each time, usually someone that's either disabled or neurodivergent or both. And we have a chat, we share some insights. So today I've got Melanie Costas, also known as the Pink Haired Warrior. And she was actually the first person that volunteered to be on this. But life gets in the way and circumstances conspire against us. But we finally got it together. So here we are. So hopefully we're not having any technological issues and you can all see us. If not, it will be on my YouTube anyway. So great. I'm just going to explain a little bit about how we met. So I'm on LinkedIn a lot and I connect a lot. Yeah, I'm autistic and apparently we're not great at connecting with people and making friends. Well, I'm just going to smash that stereotype wide open because I'm constantly finding people on my wavelength and connecting with them and making friends. And Melanie is one such person. She'd been brightening my LinkedIn feed with her beautiful pink hair and her fabulous attitude despite adversity and despite going through a ton of shit, frankly. But still, I'm not going to use the word resilience because I hate it, but she's very, very forward looking and solutions focused. So she's just like my kind of person. So here we are. Then I joined the Speakers Collective in December and realised that she was in that as well. So we've had the occasional meeting together and the occasional video chat since, and big each other up because that's what we do. Because there's no need for any kind of competition in the diversity and inclusion space. If we all signal boost each other, then we rise to the top by lifting each other up. So here we are. We're very similar people. I'm just going to give you a quick audio description in case there's anyone who is just listening in while working or they're visually impaired or for whatever reason can't see us. So I'm Charlie. I'm a 40-something female presenting person with sort of shoulder length, straggly, straight hair, which is kind of dark blonde. I'm wearing black framed glasses. Behind me is a mural. It's like a countryside mural with hills and trees. I've got a rainbow. I didn't paint the rainbow. That's way too fiddly. It's a sticker. But most of it I did, yeah, and a couple of birds in the sky in the background. And Melanie, if you could introduce yourself and give us an audio description of you as well, that would be cool.
Yeah, certainly. I don't have a lovely background, but I am white female. I have pink and, well, it's supposed to be purple at the ends hair. And I am wearing a pink sort of patterned top, pink and white patterned top. And behind me, I've actually got a pale pink fleece that I've just realised I didn't know I had there. And just my lounge wall as a backdrop. I need to get a rainbow, I think, Charlie.
Yeah. I'll send one to you in the post. and beautiful fuchsia lipstick as well, I see.
Oh, so. Yeah, sorry, yeah, that is,
yeah.
It kind of matches the bright bit of fuchsia on my top, so yeah.
So this is going to be one of the most unplanned, unstructured, tangential, meandering conversations that we can possibly have, because I've not even scripted an intro. But I just want to tell you a little bit about Speakers Collective, because that's where we kind of met properly, and it's really cool. It's a community of just over 100 speakers and aspiring speakers. We all tend to talk about things that are to do with mental health or disability or well-being in general, and it's a lovely community. It's really inexpensive to join, and it's way more than paid for itself with me, because I've then also been paid for events that I've got through Speakers Collective. And we have a really mutually supportive WhatsApp chat and a couple of in-person events, and I really recommend it. So have a look at the website, you can apply, and yeah, it's really cool. My bestie, Lucy Hobbs, recently joined as well, so I do recommend it to anyone that wants to do more speaking about disability and mental health and well-being issues.
You
So
can be
anyway,
yourself, can't you? You can be yourself in the Speakers Collective. They welcome with open arms lived experience. And as I'm always quoting you, Charlie, I am neurodivergent as well, and my brain is non-standard issue. I love that. I get that from you, that phrase. And nobody bats an eyelid if we're in the middle of something and we forget a word or we go off track, or it's
absolutely.
a nice safe space
Yeah.
that we can all, support each other in, as well as being great speakers, obviously. So yeah.
Yeah. So one of the reasons that I was really drawn to Melanie when I discovered her LinkedIn is not only is she neurodivergent, she also has complex PTSD like I do, and has gone through quite a lot of adversity, and is still smiling and is still bouncy and colourful and wanting to make the world a better place. So, but I'm not going to tell your story. I'd like you to share summary
Yeah,
of where you're at and what drives you. And
I've
yeah.
got 3 hours. No, I'm only joking. So yeah, I was actually born with a disability called Bertolotti syndrome, which briefly means that I have to use my hands. Basically means that your hip is fused to the lumbar, either one side or the other, and it happens when you're in your mum's womb between sort of 8 and 10 weeks gestation, and nobody knows why, but it's very rare. But the irony is that I was a gymnast as a child, I was horse riding, I was super flexible, and the irony there is that I've also got HEDS, which is hypermobility Ehlers-Danlos syndrome, which I was diagnosed with quite the last sort of 4 years. So being super flexible kind of hid all the issues with my spine, and everything has kind of stemmed from that. I first noticed, when I think back now, in my early 20s, when I was having back problems that shouldn't really have been there. I remember an incident where my son was a little baby, and well, he was about 2, and he's been ill. And I went to pick him up out of his bed, which is a normal thing because he was crying, and my back went. I had to call my mum. And I was 26, I think. And I'm in my mid 50s now. I don't know how I got there. But anyway, yeah, so that was when it kind of first appeared to me. But you don't necessarily think, oh, I've got a back condition.
No.
You carry on. But it wasn't until 2008 I was working in adult social care in Luton, because I used to live in Bedfordshire. And my back just seized up. I'd been on a visit to review somebody's home care, and my back just seized up, and I had to be driven home. I couldn't even drive. When I say seized up, I went into spasm like I'd been plugged into the electricity, and the pain was astronomical. Back then, 2008, didn't wait long for an MRI. I mean, let's face it, we don't know how long the wait is now, but I got seen that year. And it was identified that I had 2 quite bad prolapse discs at the base of my spine, and subsequently had my first major spinal surgery in 2009. I jokingly say, because you have to laugh, otherwise what are you going to do, that Mr. Magoo operated on me, because the screws he put in my back, if anybody doesn't know what that is, I'm showing my age, it's a cartoon of a guy that wears really thick bottom glasses, and just, it's a sort of Mickey take of somebody that, is really visually impaired.
It's really inept, isn't it? Yeah.
It's probably not for now, but back then in the 70s or whenever it was funny. But anyway, so yeah, this guy did this operation on my back and actually made it a lot worse, which subsequently gave me something called cauda equina syndrome. All these long words that people are going to have to Google, Charlie. Sorry about that.
It's okay. But
basically means that I couldn't feel anything from the waist down, which is really quite scary. And of course, I didn't say anything to my partner. I would go to the toilet, crawling up the stairs, push on my bladder to wee, and didn't recognise any of these things were red flags. You and I have discussed this. It's a neurodivergent thing, not recognising how ill you are. Until it got to the point where I couldn't actually walk anymore. It's an emergency. I had to have an emergency op. That was my second major spinal surgery. And it was then kind of discovered that I'd got this Bertolotti syndrome, this Bertolotti segment, a couple of years later. Now, moving on from that, in the middle of lockdowns, well, in between lockdowns in 2020, I also experienced finding a lump in my breast. In my, I've got dyscalculia, my neurodivergence, so I sometimes have to look where left and right is. Okay, so right, in my right breast, which turned out to be cancer. And not only that, the oncologist had said to me, "You're going to need treatment." He didn't use the word cancer.
Mm.
And you're going to come back for biopsy the next step. So when I went back the next day, he actually said, "I'm really sorry, but your breast is riddled with cancer." Those were his words.
Wow.
Deadpan face, riddled with cancer. So those are the words in my head, like implanted. And you're going to need a mastectomy because it's a threat to your life. And I'd never even had any mammograms. So this whole thing was just horrendous.
Complete bolt out of the blue.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Nothing to
No,
prepare you for it or
and we talk about
make it easier to land with you. Yeah.
trauma, and obviously all the other things that have happened to me have just been buried. And I think that the breast cancer was the last straw, which then subsequently 6 months later, after I had my mastectomy, I had a complete mental breakdown. I mean, when people talk about PTSD, I don't think they really understand how it can affect you, how it can completely disable you. Mm-hmm. I was waking up in the middle of the night, not being able to breathe, opening my window right up, just like trying to get air into me, because I was having visions during the day. I can only describe it as like a camera on the wall. I know those cine film things projected on the wall of me in the operating theatre having my breast removed with no pain relief, and everyone, just sort of like standing around going, well, whatever. Those things didn't happen because obviously I was, unconscious when I was having the operation. But so many other different things, and my anxiety levels were on the roof. And yeah, I didn't really get any treatment for that because the NHS told me I had too much trauma to be able to.
Trauma to be treated for trauma-related.
What?
What?
The reason for that is that my partner was diagnosed with a rare cancer called adenoid cystic carcinoma, ACC, in 2022. So I was on the waiting list for PTSD therapy, and then, lots of things happened last year as well. He was in hospital. He lost 40% of his blood through a massive bleed in his mouth. He had to have teeth and jaw removed to remove a tumour here. So poor thing's gone through the mill. And that trauma was probably then on top of the other trauma, on top of the other trauma, on top of the other trauma. But I have to say that when I did finally get the therapy, the proper PTSD therapy, it was EMDR. And I
was going to say, yeah.
Yeah, it's the rapid eye movement thing.
Yeah, I've been on the waiting list for that, but I seem to have fallen off it by not sending an email at a time that I was meant to send it. An email to an address which it came to me in the post on a letter, and it's like that long, and it looks like a random string of characters saying, if you still want to be on the waiting list, you need to email this address, otherwise we're going to assume you don't want it anymore, because I've miraculously fixed this. Yeah. This is how they massage the waiting list figures, I think.
Absolutely. And we know that they don't do it deliberately. We know that it's underfunded, chronically underfunded.
Yeah.
We're going to talk about that. But when I finally did get the EMDR therapy, I was very open to it, and it really, really helped. And actually what I've found, I would highly recommend it to anybody if they actually get on the waiting list and get it. But it kind of had a domino effect. This is my counsellor telling me this, of knocking out the most horrendous trauma, which was watching my partner almost die in front of me while the air ambulance crew were working on him in the kitchen. In fact, I passed out a few times on the stairs, banged my head on the handrail, and woke myself back up. And when I was going through the EMDR, I went, ow! Like I could
Wow.
feel that bang. That's how strong it was. Anyway,
So they took you back there, but in a safe
but
way.
it's safe
Yeah.
way. Yeah, really, really good. But actually, it knocked out quite a few others. The other things that were really traumatic. Obviously, I'm not cured because it's a serious mental illness, and you manage how you manage. But I'm no longer having those disabling hallucinations and visions. I do have the odd dreams, but the EMDR taught me to go to my safe place, which it's like
Brilliant.
the brain's like this supercomputer that you can actually reboot. So that's what I did.
Yeah, we're
Yeah,
forging new neural pathways all the time. So
yeah.
developing psychological skills is a life's work.
But one of the things that really struck out to me, because we know, don't we? We're talking about cancer at the moment. All the other disabilities we can go into, but cancer, just because that's the newest thing I've talked about, because my brain's geared up to it now. According to cancer research, 1 in 2 of us are going to get cancer at some point in our lives, and yet we don't talk about it. There's no mandatory mental health support, and I've just said how it affected me mentally, how my partner's now got PTSD, he's going through therapy, and you think, well, hold on a minute, why is it when you send out the letter, when you're first referred, if you suspect something, you go to your GP. Your GP then does this thing called a fast track referral letter. That letter could be in the system where it's just like 2 numbers, 2 national numbers. Maybe there could be Mind, the Samaritans, or a cancer support charity. Just numbers on that letter that you can reach out to if you need support. Because such a high number of people that have cancer, have had a cancer diagnosis, go on to develop traumatic mental health conditions, whether that's lifelong or just for a temporary basis. It's still horrendous for them. And there's nothing mandatory offered. I was told, because I live in Dorset, I was told, yes, it's mandatory, and it isn't. In fact, when I was telling my oncologist that I had my PTSD diagnosis, and I was explaining it to him, his words were, I make it sound like he's a right ogre. He's a nice guy, but it's just the understanding isn't there. That's what I'm trying to explain. He said, really? PTSD? Oh, I better write that down. He said, well, you seem so clear and coherent telling me about it.
We need to do a lot of stereotype busting and
Yeah,
myth busting on PTSD.
Talking about anything mental health or anything disabilities, I recently did my own research on this. If people that are watching now want to Google mental health, depression, anxiety, what do you think Google Images is going to find? It's going to return somebody in a dark room, rain on the window, black and white, somebody going like this when actually it's somebody like me who is, smiling and presenting as completely okay.
Yeah.
Same with disabilities. With disabilities, we know that only 8% of people with disabilities are wheelchair users, and yet the global symbol for disabilities is somebody in a wheelchair. And if you Google disabilities, up comes somebody in a wheelchair or can't access this or can't access that. And actually, the majority of us have hidden, non-apparent, invisible disabilities.
Yeah. Especially as we get older. The percentage of people who are disabled just increases the older you get.
Absolutely. And anyone can be disabled. Anybody at any stage in their life can be disabled, whether that's temporary or whether they're born with it, whatever, and it develops. But it's literally, you could be an accident, illness, or injury away from being disabled.
Yeah, or long COVID. I know a lot of people who've had to give up work because they are chronically disabled by long COVID.
Yeah, and also things that can disable you that you go through as part of the challenges. So the last time I was in employment, for example, I faced disability discrimination, even though it was a cancer charity. Can you believe that? I had to go through that. That led me to sort of burnout. I actually collapsed in A&E, and that took me years to get over. Years. Only 4% of employees disclose their disability to their employer. That's the horrendous
Yeah.
problem for HR and
We fear
yeah,
stigma, discrimination, being sacked on capability grounds, all sorts.
and people fear the reasonable adjustment thing, which I'm going to go
And
on.
being treated like a kid as well. And
Yeah, the Equality Act of 2010 is good in so many ways, but that's the UK legislation for anybody that doesn't know. It's good in so many ways because it identifies lots of things, lots of conditions that are disabilities, whereas the Disability Discrimination Act of 95 didn't. So things like asthma, visually impairment, that's short-sighted, for example, lots of different things that are classed as disability because they affect you daily are protected characteristics under the Equality Act. But it's the reasonable adjustment bit that is the problem, because what is deemed a reasonable adjustment to us, Charlie, who are disabled, is not necessarily reasonable to the employer.
yeah.
And they fear that it's going to cost all this money, and actually most of them don't cost anything, or around, I think it's around £100 the average.
Or they worry it's not fair to other people. So this is an example that comes up a lot, the ability to work from home. So if you're disabled and not as mobile as your non-disabled peers at work, if it's a real challenge for you to get out of the house to deal with public transport or driving and parking, anything like that, it's harder for you to get in. So
I know.
saying things like, well, I want my entire team in 1 or 2 days a week, regardless of whether they're disabled, because otherwise it isn't fair on those who we are making come in. Well, you shouldn't be making adults do anything anyway, because let's give people agency. We're not naughty, unruly school kids that need discipline. We're generally employed in jobs that we want to do, and you can trust us to do them. But yeah, I told you it would be tangential, didn't I? But anyway, let's level the playing field. If it's harder for people to get in because they're disabled or because they've got disabled kids, or any other reason, they could be a carer, they could have an elderly relative living with them that needs a lot of care, anything that makes it harder for them to get into the office, it's immediately a moot point whether it's fair to people who do not have those challenges.
I know, and I don't.
So a tribunal wouldn't. If an employer said, no, we're not going to give you that adjustment because it's not fair, a tribunal is likely to not agree with them. So, and there is case precedent about that. I'm not an employment law specialist, but I do read the case law.
Yeah, I mean, I understand that completely, and this is the thing that I think that they think that being equitable means that you have to treat each employee the same, but actually that's quite ableist, because if you're neurodivergent or if you have any kind of disability, you're already massively disadvantaged, let's face it. So if you're going to be treated the same as other employees, then that's actually discriminatory.
Because we need equity. We need to level the playing field.
Absolutely. And this is the thing, and this is probably why only 4% of disabled employees feel comfortable disclosing their disabilities. When, this is why, obviously, this is what I do with my consulting services. We work, sort of bridge that gap with my lived experience between HR management and employees. Because there's that kind of barrier, that invisible barrier, that if I say anything, I'm going to be seen as this is the disabled employee. Yeah. I'm going to be seen as a troublemaker.
Yeah.
It's going to affect my career. It's going to affect my promotional prospects. They might even get rid of me because I'm, not as good as or less than. And then from the HR and management point of view, oh God, what do we do? How do we deal with these people? We don't know about disabilities. we've gone to a diversity, inclusion, and with disability workshop, 3 years
Tick the box, yeah.
ago, and
Yeah.
we don't really know. We're kind of out of our depth when actually, you and I know that employing the consultancy services of somebody with lived experience actually benefits everybody, not just the neurodivergent or somebody with cancer or somebody with disabilities.
Or a bereaved parent like me as well.
Yeah,
Yeah.
a parent, yeah. I mean, this is the thing. People obviously assume that once you've got through whatever it is, whether you've lost a child, obviously that's awful. If you've had cancer, if you have had an operation, if you've had a breakdown or anything, and you've gone through treatment, and you've gone through counselling, or you've had the cancer taken out, that you're okay now. When actually, that's just the start. You are affected for the rest of your life. You can't just press a button and go, oh, they took my cancer out, so now everything's great. Thanks. No, it's not like that. And
Yeah.
it's just to know that only around 50% of employees have a cancer workplace policy, and most policies for the employees with HR and management that look at disabilities and neurodivergence and all of those things aren't really robust. They may have one or two lines. That's really not supportive.
No, absolutely. And I don't want to disrupt your flow too much, but because I worked in HR for 20 years and then I've got my own lived experience, I've got quite a unique angle, because
Right.
not only have I experienced firsthand some of the challenges that I've had with thriving at work, being autistic, having ADHD, having complex PTSD. I've gone through some cancer scares, and I've never actually had cancer, but I've had biopsies for precancerous cells and that kind of thing. Going through PTSD triggers and psychological treatment as well. All of that stuff, I've got that lived experience angle, and I'm bisexual as well. So there's the intersectionality
Yeah.
angle. But I've also worked in HR, so I've seen the reasonable adjustment requests come in. I've seen which ones are agreed and which ones are disputed. I've seen what cases end up in a good situation where the employee's getting the support they need. Where I've seen where there's been a bit of a negotiation and some kind of halfway house, and I've been one of those cases. I've seen where it's all gone tits up. Rarely does it end up in tribunal, because quite often, if the situation becomes irrevocably broken, you end up with an employee being managed out of the business and made to sign a non-disclosure agreement or a settlement agreement to get a payoff. And any HR professional, unless they work in some utopian dream of a company, any HR professional, if you ask about this off the record, will tell you you've got no idea how many people actually get discriminated against and managed out of the business. That's HR speak for constructive dismissal, in my view.
No,
Yeah, you've
no,
got no idea how often that's happening, because in almost every case, there is something stopping us from talking about it. And we've already talked about the importance of processing trauma and working through our triggers, developing psychological skills. How the heck are you supposed to be able to do that if you can't even talk to your former colleagues about what you've been through?
absolutely. And it's so difficult for HR because they've got the pressure from the employees and they've got the pressure from the management,
Yeah.
and then they've got pressure of trying to do their job, and basically plate spinning on a daily basis.
Yeah.
And no surprise then that, because I've got some colleagues that work in HR, it's no surprise there that they end up facing burnout themselves.
Yeah. It's really hard because
Oh,
you're conflicted, because you have to support the business and the business goals, which includes protecting its reputation and establishing a reputation as being inclusive and an employer of choice, all that stuff, whilst also making sure that nobody is getting shat all over because of their characteristics. So
I know we need to sort of
It's
move
not
out.
easy.
We need to sort of move out of this, and I think obviously it comes from above HR, doesn't it?
Yeah.
But it does mean that HR can be more supported, which is obviously where I would come in, because I'd work in harmony with them, not, telling them you're not doing this and you're not doing that.
Yeah, there
Review,
can't be a us and them and innocent victims and evil oppressors kind of
yeah,
situation, or it's never going to get any better.
like reviewing their policies, having awareness sessions, talking to them about what's troubling them, what are their biggest challenges, because it's not always about the employee. Sometimes it's miscommunication, isn't it? The employee. I mean, I managed a whole team in Bedfordshire when I worked for drug and alcohol support organisation, and they were called Adaction. I think they are We Are With You now, a national organisation. And that was really difficult because obviously I was managing a team, and my team were trying to manage within the other team. It was a bit of a conflict of interest because we could only accept referrals from people that had been through the treatment program of getting off drugs and alcohol, so they were in a sort of stable state. Now, if you've ever worked in drug and alcohol services, there's not really such a thing. You're always in recovery.
Yeah.
You're always in recovery. So
and it's a bit of a roller coaster as well. And it's a lifelong journey.
Oh yeah. So we had our colleagues saying, yeah, well, we've got this person we want to refer. So Progress to Work, the project that I managed county-wide, was about getting people into next steps. So that's employment, training, supported accommodation, from getting through their treatment into next steps. But invariably, the cycle of change, the wheel, that if you can picture that, once you're on that, you're never really off it. You'll come off, people call it, falling off the wagon. You'll come back on. You have to manage all of that, as well as adhering to this ridiculous target that the DWP, because we worked with the DWP, have given you, of getting this many people into work in this project, because they don't actually understand the concept of what recovery is.
Yeah.
And it's
that
not
sounds as bullshit as the neurodivergent hiring programs. Yeah, by all means recognise that neurodivergent people can bring some wonderful skills and really add value, but don't get them in the door and then forget all about them and not adequately support them.
Yeah, and don't, why can't you nurture them? I mean, some of our creative skills, I call it, I go from scrambled egghead to light bulbs popping off, like popcorn ideas. Okay. Now, if you've got a workplace that's actually understands that and knows that on the days that you're switched on, right, let's sit down, let's do this, let's do that. Yeah, how can we move this forward? Actually, everybody benefits from that, because innovation breeds innovation and ideas breed ideas. Yeah. But if you stagnate that person and you just go, oh God, if we go with them, then tomorrow they might forget whatever, the brain fog is strong, that kind of thing. That's just like really putting somebody right back down again. Yeah. I don't really understand how, when I explain to people that I'm neurodivergent, they then say, oh, okay, so you're autistic then, are you? It's like saying that I'm disabled. Oh, okay, which wheelchair do you use? Just make an assumption that I use a wheelchair because I'm disabled, and make an assumption that I have this type of neurodivergence, neurodiversity versus, there's a whole, it used to be called a spectrum. I don't really like that word, but actually it kind of is on all different levels of disabilities and neurodivergence.
If you realise it's a 3-dimensional spectrum, rather than going from not at all autistic to super autistic, or completely normal to neurospicy as well. Yeah.
What is normal? And that always makes me laugh.
I don't know any normal people.
No, it always makes me laugh about what is normal. But
it's a social construct.
I suppose I do kick and fight against the system. And when I say the system, I mean, let's just take recruitment, for example. We know, don't we, that there's just one way or the highway, really. You send your CV and a cover letter, or you fill out an application form. What happened to, can I get my phone, send you a video of how fired up I am about wanting to work for this company, and
Yeah.
tell you all the great things that I can do on here, on this? How nice would that be for the HR director to have something different? Look at that.
Yeah.
I know that's not fair on the other. We go back to that. That's not fair on the other candidates. Well, it's not actually an advantage, is it? Because we can't write,
Anyone can do that, though.
just because we can't write war and peace in a style
Yeah.
that we want, this regimented box that you want us to fit into to apply for a job, doesn't mean that we haven't got all these other things to offer. And yeah, like you said, anyone can do that. It's not like it can only.
Anyone can benefit from having the interview questions in advance as well. I know I harp on about this a lot. And yes, we talked about equity and levelling the playing field earlier. But there are so many people who struggle in an interview because they don't know what they're going to be asked. It could be they've got brain fog, they could be menopausal, they could have they could be autistic or ADHD, dyslexic. There's so many reasons, but this is why it's bonkers. We're expected to prepare for job interviews. My very autistic brain is thinking, how the heck do you prepare for something if you don't know what you're going to be asked?
I don't understand that either. I mean, I run a not-for-profit social enterprise called Rural Mental Health Matters, and I would interview for volunteers just as I would interview for staff. We currently aren't funded, not for profit, so I don't have any paid staff, and even as founder and CEO, I'm not on a salary. But when my volunteers, we had an informal chat like this. That's what we did.
Yeah.
And they were so nervous. Oh, I haven't got this and I haven't got that qualification. I'm like, just tell me why. What is it that you thought about? Oh, one of them even said, oh, I liked your LinkedIn content, and it really sort of brightened up my feed. So I thought I'd get in touch. And I was like, yeah, okay.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, I'm not qualified in doing this, but I'd like to do this for you. I'm like, well, let's give it a go, and we'll have regular team meetings. I know my volunteers are all over the world. I've got one in Mexico, one in New Delhi, one in Canada, some in the UK. We have to work out a time zone that works for all of us. But that's what it's about. It's about what people feel comfortable with. And if you start off on the back foot, like you say, talking about interview questions, I'll just tell you a quick story about one of them. I was overqualified for the job, which invariably happens, and the pay wasn't matched up to what the job should have been, but it was a carers organisation supporting carers, which is something that's quite passionate and close to my heart, especially as my partner has been my carer on and off through all of the stuff that I've gone through. But anyway, I'm at the interview, didn't get the questions in advance, Charlie, as usual. But one of the questions, and let me see if my brain fog will tell me it as it was. One of the questions was, what would you do? It's business development side of things. What would you do to bring in more revenue for the organisation? What steps would you take, and who would you go and speak to, and why? One, I don't know the network because I'm not working for the company.
Yeah.
Two, I've got no access to the financials, so I can't actually tell you what a 5-year strategy, and you expect me to come up with that in an answer. And three, I don't know what your funding streams are, so how can I answer that? So I was just, these are the sorts of ridiculous questions that you get.
Yeah.
I would like to hear questions like, what attracted you to our company? Why are you here? What do you think that you can bring personally for what you've got?
Yeah.
And the job descriptions that read like war and peace and just don't match up to the job.
Absolutely. And it can have ableist and ageist language in there as well. Like, how would you like to work for a dynamic, fast-paced, exciting organisation? I'm thinking, no, that sounds like overwhelming and pretty disorganized and hellish to me, to be fair. But
Yeah,
yeah, that question, that example you gave, it's not neuro inclusive on so many levels. It's going to be discriminating against neurodivergent applicants because they are more likely to not have the bullshit and bluster to blag their way through it,
yeah,
which is the only way to pass a question like that.
yeah,
It was in multiple parts rather than one step at a time. That's been one of my pet hates. If someone says to me something like, for instance, "So why would you like to work for us? What can you bring to the table here? And why are you leaving your last job?" And I'm thinking, that last
yeah.
question, yeah, I'm going to tackle that first. And then, but while I'm formulating an answer to that, I'm trying to keep in my mind the first couple of bits of it. And I couldn't even tell you now, talking to you now, what that question was,
I
because it
know.
had three parts to it, which they could have asked one at a time.
I know, and then they're not even listening because they're sitting there scribbling down notes and answers and whether you score high enough and don't
Mm.
take into consideration anything. Um, on a more positive note, I remember one interview I went for. It was at Luton Airport, actually, at an airfield. I didn't want the job. I got offered the job, but I didn't want the job because it was travelling all around the country, which I didn't realise, which wasn't in the job description. But anyway, we had a really good interview. It was really, really good. Me and the managing director, and I just openly said, "So have I got the job then? Because I can do the job standing on my head." And he said, "You know what? No one's ever done that. No one's ever asked outright." And I
No,
went, "Well, shouldn't I ask?"
it's an obvious question to ask. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
when I look back, obviously that is my neurodivergent brain speaking out loud because that's not the done thing that you do. But yeah, why wouldn't you ask? Just because they've asked you the question, why do you want the job? You need to then say, well, why don't you want me? Not in so many words, but do you want me then?
Yeah.
And I think that if people felt more confident to be themselves in an interview and not be this sort of stiff upper lip, so nervous, can't slip up, can't show them any of my vulnerabilities because that means they won't employ me, I think that the world would be a much better place because what we've got at the moment is people going on this sort of conveyor belt of not of masking. That's the word I was looking
Yeah.
of completely masking. They're in front of the HR who see a masked person. So actually, it's not really HR's fault because they're presented with what they're presented with, right? If they're not presented with the actual person, then they're not necessarily going to be putting provisions in or be thinking about, oh, this person could do with some support perhaps, or maybe we should ask this question in a different way. And
I really overmask in job interviews. So I've not had that many actually, because I was at the Law Society and Solicitor Regulation Authority group for 17 years. But I had a little rocky period with them. I think it was before I realised I was autistic. So back in 2017,
yeah,
and I applied for a job elsewhere. And I didn't know I was autistic. And I went along. I was already working from home 1 to 2 days a week, actually, just because I'd got anxiety and my kids were high maintenance and I was allowed to do that. But I went along to this interview and I gave this really glossy performance as like some high-powered HR person who can change your culture and communicate effectively with all kinds of people and really have influence. It was great. I had a steady handshake and eye contact and everything. Didn't really know I was doing it. I was just putting
yeah,
on a performance. I didn't know about masking. I didn't know I was autistic. But when they offered me the job, my heart sank because I knew that I'd got carried away and showed them something that was actually a persona and not representative of what I can actually do.
yeah.
So I'd talk myself into something that I didn't feel comfortable with. If they'd sent me the questions in advance, that would not have happened.
Yeah, exactly. And it's the other thing. The other thing that gets me is not having the salary on the job description. And I cannot understand that. If you, I know there's laws coming in that are going to change that. I can't think what it's called. It's something to do with pay, Transparency Act or something. I can't
Yeah.
remember the exact, but I've seen it. So that's hopefully going to change. But that kind of sends a massive alarm bell, because when you're applying for a job, when you've already got protected characteristics, let's say disabilities, neurodivergence, when you've already got that, it's already more challenging for you to apply for the job. So it might take you a bit longer to do the application in the first place. So you're putting hours and hours and hours of your own time in, and then to find out at the interview stage, or when you've offered the job, that actually the salary is loads less than what you were expecting, which generally, in my experience, when they hide the pay, it's because it's crap.
Absolutely. Yeah. So that happened to me last year. I had a permanent HR job at a mental health charity, but I'd bitten off more than I could chew, really. I couldn't do that job in part-time hours, and I couldn't cope with working 5 days a week. It was a bit under-resourced. But I applied for some of the jobs, and one of them I could do with my hands tied behind my back. It was another HR systems analyst job, but they didn't give me the salary. But they asked me in the application process, what is your current salary? So I spent hours and hours doing the application, and then they rang me and said, you've not been successful because this pays, I think it was 4,000 less than I was on at that time. And I said, you haven't asked me what my earning expectations are. You haven't told me what the salary is. All you've asked me is what I'm on now. And I wanted a job that was easier than the one I was doing. So why can't I make the decision to take a backward step in my career? Literally, I'm dealing with so many things. My kids are autistic and anxious. One of them has issues attending school regularly. We've all gone through a close family bereavement. I'm menopausal. Why the hell shouldn't I take a step down in salary and responsibilities? Who is it for a recruiter to tell me that I've got to be constantly ambitious?
That is very true. There must be an ism in there somewhere, but I can't think of it. My dad actually was a teacher. Both my parents were teachers. Put me off. I never wanted to be a teacher. But my dad was a teacher in high school, which is sort of like mid to late teens. I don't know. Is it 13 to 16, something like that? High school. I can't remember. The UK school system is ridiculous. You have high school, junior school, middle school, upper school, whatever. But it was the teenagers, and it was into the distraction. He took back then early retirement, and he went and worked for MFI. If everybody remembers MFI, a bit like IKEA but English. Literally, he went and worked for MFI, and they were really open because there was a lot of ageism. There still is a lot of ageism around. And they said, well, yeah, but you were head of English, and you were this, that, and the other. And he said, yeah, just want something that I can turn up, wander around, meet people, learn a few things, go on a few courses, do it, and go home and switch off. That's what I want.
Absolutely.
And top up my pension. That's basically what I want. And they were like, yeah, fine, we're happy to have you. And they were lovely. And there was actually a guy, I'm pretty sure my dad said he was in his 70s, that was there when my dad was there, who just wouldn't retire. Every year they said, do you want to retire, Gordon? He's not with us anymore, so I can say his name. Do you want to retire, Gordon? And he would go, no, I'll stay on another year. And they just did, no pressure. Obviously, he was supported. Obviously, he only worked a few hours a week, but that probably kept him going. Yeah, who is it for the recruitment people to deem what you might want to go and work in a bloody, not that you would actually, who would,
you might want to be a dinner lady,
you might want to be a lollipop person, I mean, really,
I'd love to chop vegetables in a pub kitchen, actually. It's one of my things I do for stress relief. I've had a really bad day at work, and I haven't had any of those since I've been self-employed, none at all. But what I do, I'll have a panic attack by the end of the day, and once I can breathe again, I chop vegetables, so I might make a chili con carne where I'm dicing the fuck out of an onion and like abusing a pepper and things like that. And then, by the time I've done that and browned the meat, I'm back to my normal self.
Wow, I love these coping strategies that we have. Me, mine is sometimes cleaning before I break my bloody ankles. Just like, right, get up, because that just takes my mind off. It's mind-numbing cleaning. It's not a chore that I like to do. So,
Yeah.
get the
My
Hoover out.
sensory issues don't like cleaning.
And then I end up swearing at my back out loud because
Mm.
invariably my back pain increases if I do anything like that. But yeah, it's quite funny what we do, isn't it? Because often people say to me, I don't know if you get this, when I tell them about all the lived experience challenges that I live with. Oh, poor you. Oh,
Yeah.
you're too young to have, whatever. Oh, I don't know. I don't know how you cope.
Oh, I hate that. Oh, how do I cope? Well, I wasn't given a choice. I'm just getting on with it. Don't call me brave. Don't call me an inspiration. I could just put myself away and become a shadow of my former self, or I could try and do stuff and make the world a better place for my daughters.
Absolutely. And
And there's a lot of things that bring me joy. So
I find that comment is when I say about my pain levels, because I'm basically in sort of between 3 and 5 out of 10 all the time, and I have not had a day off pain since March 2008, since my back first went, when I told that right at the beginning of this. And it goes up to 10, obviously, and I take pain medication when it gets to sort of, I don't know, 8 or 9 or crying stage. And you'll get people say, I don't know how you cope with that. I can't cope with a headache. I can't cope with this toothache. And I can't. And there's a sort of undertone of I'm making it up, because who could possibly go through life in that amount of pain? So my answer to that is, look, I'm in pain if I do nothing. I'm in pain if I do anything. So I worked out a few years ago, I may as well just do something, right?
yeah.
Otherwise, I mean, if you would look at my MRI and my CT scan, I call it a rap sheet of everything wrong with my back, you'd probably be then expected to come and visit me bedbound in one of those, and somebody turning me every 2 hours, because that's just what it looks like on paper. But clearly not. I mean, my nickname, Pinkhead Warrior, isn't me giving it to myself. That's actually Dr. Nupi Aurora gave me that. She's a GP, and she said, you just fight through anything. And I'm like, yeah, I know, I do understand that. And I really fought against using that Pinkhead Warrior thing, but it seems to resonate with people.
Yeah.
It seems to resonate with people. And the pink hair thing, I haven't talked about that. The pink hair thing, this is a funny story. So I always used to have, naturally, you can see I'm not pink. Look, my eyebrows aren't, shock horror, everyone. I'm not a natural pink.
Oh, you just ruined the whole illusion.
I know.
I knew we were going to get real, but I didn't realise it was going to be this real.
Listen, children, don't have nightmares, okay? There are true pinks out there. But anyway, so I'm naturally brunette, but I've had brunette, highlights, lowlights, all sorts of colours. And I was going to my hairdresser for a few years having highlights. I got to a stage where I had brown at the top, blonde at the bottom. Breast cancer happened, and I don't know, maybe it's a subconscious thing with pink, but I started to notice people with rose gold hair, because that was the thing sort of around sort of 2020, 2021.
I love it.
And I went to my hairdresser. I booked in May 21 to my hairdresser, who's been doing my hair a few years. And I said, yeah, Jazz, I'd like it rose pink, rose gold. So even when I was in there, she said, I thought you were joking. And we have a joke about that to this day. And I was like, no, just do it. And I had no idea whether it would suit me. And I've gone from, my profile picture is this pink, I think. I need to change it, but then I'd be changing it all the time, to a couple of weeks ago where it fades because I'd been to Spain and it was like late 30s, early 40s, the sun had bleached it. Because pink is always a temporary colour. So I like bright pink, bright purples.
I often have intense red and that fades really quickly.
And the thing is, I really like it, and I can't see me going out with people. And it's kind of become my brand, so I really like it. But I do have an issue with being called brave. I think you mentioned that word, and
Yeah.
being called and saying I'm a breast cancer survivor.
Yeah.
I don't like that. Yes, I am technically, but
Makes it sound like other people that don't get past it have just like rolled over and gone, yeah, go on then, kill me off. Yeah.
well, the thing is, I haven't. I'm not in remission yet, although all my scans have been clear. Thankfully, I'm not in remission. You have to be 5 years clear scans before you're classed as being in remission. But it's like I'm surviving. Actually, when my work with Pfizer on the Cancer Insight panel was really good because we're working with other people that have been, their lives have been touched with by cancer, and it was a global first for Pfizer. An absolutely brilliant experience, nearly 2 years working with them. But that lived experience. And one of the people there said, I'm sick and tired of being called a survivor. She says, we are all surviving every single day. We are surviving. We are surviving. And that's what I use. And that's what's in my bio on LinkedIn, surviving cancer. And that's what I say. And when people go, oh, you got cancer now then? Well, I haven't not got it because I'm not in remission. So I just have scans that are clear. And funnily enough, although I'm stable with the PTSD for now because of the EMDR, I am really starting to get the anxiety build because this week or last week, brain won't tell me, but recently I got my letter for my annual mammogram, which is the 17th of September. And it took me back immediately to last year. And I posted about this morning on LinkedIn.
So it re-traumatizes you.
When I went on my own thinking,
fear the worst as well, yeah.
I can go. I drove all the way to Bournemouth, which is 35 miles. Drove all the way to Bournemouth on my own. Yeah, I've got this. It's been 3 years last year. It's been 3 years. I'm fine. I can go on my own. Up to go with my partner. Yeah, I'm cool. Well, I got up the stairwell and my feet, I could feel the anxiety, and it was like a tsunami. As soon as I could see, I didn't go in the lift because I have a bit of claustrophobia. I went upstairs, and as soon as my eyes met the level just before I go into reception of the breast cancer unit in Bournemouth, I was faced with this sort of rising anxiety, and I've not experienced this feet glued to the floor business before, so that was really quite scary.
I get that in one of my local hospitals as well, because I've had miscarriages and gone through waiting areas, passing blood and things like that. And yeah, this was a trauma that I bottled for 10 years before I went through it with a psychodynamic therapist.
Yeah, it's awful.
Meanwhile, I was going there and then wondering why I can't walk and I can't breathe.
Oh, that's awful. I mean, it's horrible to go through. The thing was, I was glued to the stairs, and then the wall started to move. And I just thought, hold on a minute, the wall's moving. And it started to be, it was sort of like a matrix
experience. You got the twisties, like Simone Biles. Yeah.
But a couple of people passed me, and I talked about this in the post that I did. A couple of people passed me. They saw, I couldn't speak because just frozen with fear and like this horrible feeling on. But my eyes were speaking to them. I was trying to get contact, and they just did this. Yeah.
Oh, great.
Now, that's not because I'm being judgmental of them, because let's face it, there's all this stigma. There's all this, do I approach somebody, don't I approach somebody, I don't know what to do, so therefore I'm just going to walk past and say, it's a bit like bereavement, people don't know what to say to you, so they don't say anything.
I got avoided a lot by my friends on the school run after Iggy died.
Exactly. So you kind of see from their point of view, but this woman came out of reception, came down the stairs, and I didn't even give her eye contact. The concern on her face was there immediately, and she just stood with me. And I was like, oh, I'm holding you up because I could speak. When somebody is sharing that space with you and helping you to feel safe, it's just like, I can't explain how helpful that is. Yeah. They don't think they're doing anything, you know, I'm useless, I'm only standing here talking to you. Actually, it's like you've just, you know, touch me with a miracle hand,
Yeah.
because she said she offered to go in with me. She told me about the nurse that was doing the mammogram. She's lovely. She's, she's quite young, but she's such a sweetheart. Shall I go and get her? All of this. By the time we'd finished chatting, I was not completely, but my levels were right down. I walked into reception on my own. I let that woman go. And I just was said to the nurse, I've just had a meltdown in the stairwell. The nurse did my mammogram. I mean, I don't know, they probably got no time to do this, but the nurse walked me right the way down the stairs until I was out of the building, and then offered to walk me to my car.
Yeah.
And I now know that I can't in September go on my own, because I've had that experience. I don't want to have it again. So my partner's going to have to take time off to come with me. It's all of these things that they don't take into consideration. They give you these appointments either. They know I've got PTSD. They know that I had a meltdown. It's all in the notes, and yet there's nothing proactively offered to support me to get to my appointment.
This is why lived experience is so important. Yeah. After Iggy died, people at work would be aware of things like his birthday and the anniversary and things like that. Make some supportive noises about going easy on myself and things like that. It's a friend in the village whose son, who actually Iggy knew, that had died of a brain tumour a few years previously, that was messaging me on GCSE results day saying, stay off Facebook, it's going to be hard, and things like that. So her lived experience meant she knew how to reach out to me in a way that was going to actually matter to me and make a difference.
And the thing
That's why I'm going to do a sales pitch here for you now. This is why it's important to get people like us, people like Melanie, into your office to tell you the stuff that you need to know about supporting people as individuals with all the adversities that life throws at us, all the things we're juggling. And rather than just taking a guess about what you need to do in order to be supportive and safe for people that are going through all different things. Transitioning at work is a really good example of this, actually. Neither me or Melanie have done that. But if you're trans and you're transitioning at work, please don't anybody ever write a policy about that without getting members of the trans community in to tell you what actually matters. And not, people can review policies and pull out the grammatical mistakes and spelling mistakes and say I'd space that better and things like that. But it's someone that's gone through that can tell you what you've forgotten about. And lived experience is so important. Nothing about us without us.
And it's key. It's key, actually, to the future success of any business in any industry. Wherever there are people, if we consider, like I said, 1 in 2 of us will get cancer at some point in our lives. Unfortunately, me and my partner, 2 in 2 of us, plus my dad, and my mum lost her little brother. But, that aside, 1 in 2 of us will get cancer. 1 in 5 have disability. 15 to 20% of the population are neurodivergent. Need I go on?
So many of us are undiagnosed.
1 in 4 business about mental health always gets me, because we all have mental health. So at any point it could be, 5. I think the mental health foundations say it's more like 3 and 4. I can't remember where I saw that, but they did some research around it. At some point, I'm not saying long-term mental health illness conditions. I'm saying about how it touches us.
And that could include going through burnout and things like that are not necessarily got a long-term health condition on your medical record.
Or an accident that you've gone through that caused you some kind of trauma and then you've had treatment for and stuff like that. But the thing that people don't really understand is the ripple effect of all of that. So if somebody is in the workplace going through all of that, even if they're masking, it's having an effect on their productivity. It's having an effect on their work, their colleagues, how they act around their colleagues, how they interact with their colleagues, how they work, how they get through the day. So you've actually only got sort of a ghost of a person. So it actually benefits you to have people with lived experience hire consultants like ourselves to come in and talk to you. And I actually think that one-off workshops are great, but you do need continuity. It's a
Mhm.
continual learning and development thing. And I've worked in so many places where they tick a box that you and I have mentioned this tick box business. Let's get Melanie in, or let's get Charlie in to talk about whatever. Great. And all the staff are fired up. But
It
how many
helps. It's not enough.
it helps because it's
Yeah.
great. It switches the light bulb on, but that's not enough, is it? You,
I,
you need to keep it going. So, how many of us have been on training and really been fired up about that training, and then what? How long does it take us to forget that training
mm.
or for it to wane off? It needs to be then a continuum, you know, and you need to be proactive. So many organisations wait until something happens. They wait until the member of staff has cancer. They wait until the member of staff declares they've got a disability. They wait until it's too much, because by the time we've said anything, it's too much already. And it's just,
Oh, we don't need a transitioning at work policy. We don't have any trans staff. You
oh,
don't know that. Maybe they just don't feel safe to transition because you don't have a policy.
oh yeah, I've heard this about disabled people. Yeah, we haven't got any disabled. We haven't
I did a
got
keynote once,
300.
quite
They've got,
recently. I did a keynote about neurodiversity inclusion and being autistic and ADHD at a multinational company. And I was told that no one from HR was there and that HR don't think they need a policy for neurodiversity inclusion because they've only got 4 of them. They've only what? They've only got 4 of what? We're all neurodiverse from each other. Yeah.
oh my goodness.
Baffling.
Yeah.
Yeah, it just said to me they haven't got a culture of psychological safety where people can be open about their needs.
Oh dear. Oh, we could talk forever, couldn't we?
Yeah,
It's so lovely chatting to you.
yeah, it is. I know we've gone over the hour. Yeah, we could actually talk all afternoon, but I've got another Zoom meeting with
Yeah,
Kirsty
yeah,
Morgan
yeah,
at 2 o'clock. So I'm going
yeah,
to go and have some lunch and check
yeah,
on the kids.
yeah. My stomach's probably going to
We
make a noise.
haven't talked about quite a lot of the themes we said we were going to talk about, so I think we need a episode 2.
Right.
Yeah,
So yeah, there's
and
so
I'll
much.
jot down a few notes. I want to talk about alexithymia, and I want to talk about things like introspection. So we're not able to pick up the cues from the body, which I think can be related to not realizing for a while that we're actually really struggling with something and need medical attention,
Absolutely,
and
like with the
so
broken
much.
ankles. Yeah, absolutely. We let's have a part two, and
Yeah,
we'll talk about that. It's been really useful, and I hope it's helped people listening to our extensive lived experience. And my last word would be: check out our profiles and book a call with us and hire us, because you're only going to benefit from having us in work with you.
absolutely. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Charlie.
See you
Bye.
again soon.
Okay, bye. Bye.
Right there.